So welcome everyone to the AWS South Wales user group. It's our first time this year doing a virtual remote meetup. So we're going to see how this goes, but there's a number of important messages that we're trying to get across. And we kind of think with speakers being based around the UK and Ireland, and with the timeliness of some of the messages we're going to be talking about, we thought it'd be good to try and do a virtual online session. So thank you very much if you're watching, whether you're on the live stream, watching back the recording. Before we kick off, one of the things we want to speak of, we've got an event coming up. So that's next month. As part of the user group, we're involved in running Serverless Days Cardiff. So go to cardiff.serverlessdays.io. So that's it's a conference focused around serverless technologies. It's cloud agnostic, but we do have a number of speakers from AWS as well as the other hyperscale cloud providers. We've got hands-on workshops taking place on the Wednesday, 20th of September, and then on Thursday, the 21st, we've got the day of talks. So that's everyone. Usman Khalid is general manager for events and workflows, is doing our opening keynote. We then have talks, people like Julian Wood. We have a number of AWS serverless heroes. We've got a principal researcher from National Cybersecurity Center talking about the state of serverless. We've got a number of case studies from the likes of DVLA, from BBC, from the Lego Group, a whole raft of other talks. So it's going to be a fantastic event. If people are from sort of underrepresented groups in technology, we do have free tickets available to underrepresented and diversity groups. So just feel free to reach out for me and we can sort that out. So with that, I'd like to welcome Preece Williams. So Preece is going to give us a talk about a networking service. Came out last year, I think it was, AWS VPC Lattice. So Preece, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself and then take it away.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone. Yes, so I'm Preece Williams. I work for the DVLA. I'm a cloud architect. I don't know if some of you know Chris Williams. He's also in the DVLA. He's kind of my counterpart in engineering. So I work in architecture alongside the engineering facility. So today I'm going to talk about VPC Lattice, which was introduced last year in ReInvent. It generated quite a bit of interest and it became generally available about 3 months ago, and within the last couple of weeks it's now available in the UK. So it's a good time to have a look at it, good time to kick it around. So I'm going to have a look at it in terms of what problems does it solve, a little bit how it works, and then we cut into a pre-recorded demo. Sorry, Matt, I chickened out, but hopefully it'll still show the main features of it. So what problems does it solve? Well, I mean, part of the flexibility of AWS and the platform is the huge number of ways that you can deploy services. Along that flexibility and the different ways of presenting services is also a lot of different ways that you have to access those services. So if we just run through a few examples, you may have deployed a service within Kubernetes, presented externally via some kind of load balancer, routing in via your ingress path. Typically, you need to route traffic to that across maybe a transit gateway or a VPC peer. Your client will call it using maybe your organization's Route 53 zone. And then you can secure that service using things like security groups, NACLs, network access controls. But then importantly, you have to then overlay your own authentication and authorization mechanisms onto that interface. Compare that with a Kubernetes services that you're accessing from within the cluster. And now you're going to have a completely different kind of host name that's using your internal cluster DNS zone. You may secure that using Kubernetes network security policies. If you want to encrypt traffic, you will need to inject certificates into the pods and manage that. And again, you'll have to overlay your own authentication and authorization mechanisms. And finally, if you're serverless, you could have a Lambda function, which you're presenting using API gateway, for example, using a private endpoint so that you access it from within a VPC using an execute API endpoint. There's no custom domain name supported at the moment with this setup, so you'll end up with this fairly gnarly manufactured host name. And again, you have set a different kind of security profile here. You have the security of the endpoint itself, which you can use security groups, IAM policies, and the API gateway can be secured using, you can overlay authentication onto the API gateway using SigV4 signing from AWS and authorize that using your resource policy. So lots of different ways. They're all perfectly valid ways of presenting services, but there's a different security and authentication profile associated with each one. And of course, importantly, it means that if you move a service, say from being a Lambda to a Kubernetes service, you have to tell all your clients and they have to adapt and change the way that they're consuming those services. So that's what Lattice gives us. It gives us a mechanism to decouple, if you like, your clients from your backend services, so that you end up with a single, consistent way of presenting your APIs and authenticating access onto them. So how does it work? I'm just going to run through some slides quickly, like a virtual whiteboard type scenario. So imagine you've got a number of different services. You've got a Lambda service, you've got a Kubernetes service deployed and presented via an ALB, and potentially a good old-fashioned service running on an EC2 instance. And you have a bunch of clients in different accounts, in different VPCs that want to access those services. So with Lattice, the fundamental construct, the thing you start with, is a thing called a service network. So for example, you may have a production service network, a separate non-production service network. And this is the thing where you are going to register all your services that you want to present to your clients. You can have an access policy on the service network itself. So typically, sorry to bog you down with some gnarly IAM, but typically this gives you an example of a fairly broad access policy, where basically you're saying that you're allowing anything to invoke your Lattice services as long as it's from a particular organization. So like I say, a fairly broad policy. I mean, it's up to you. You can structure this however way you want, but that's a sort of typical use case. So to route traffic from clients onto Lattice, they need to be in a VPC, and they need to be in a VPC which is associated with the service network. So we create these associations, and we can share the service network across organizations using RAM shares and so on. So we associate the client VPCs with the network, and then we define our services within the service network, which, if you like, is a representation of our real services, but within the context of Lattice. And each service can then have its own access policy. And again, typically this would be where you have a much more granular policy. So in this example, we're allowing access to a particular IAM role. And in fact, we are also stipulating a condition that restricts the HTTP request method. So a much more granular access policy onto each individual service. VPC Lattice supports custom domain names, which means you can use your organization's familiar Route 53 zones and map those using Route 53 to the DNS name that Lattice generates for each of your service. Within Lattice, we route Lattice services to the actual backend, to the physical backend, using things called target groups. And they're very similar to ALB target groups, if you've worked with those. So Lattice supports target groups that reference a Lambda, or reference an application load balancer, or reference an IP address of an interface within a VPC. And then we define our services with routing rules and forwarding rules, which govern how they forward traffic to those target groups. So a very simple example on screen, we're listening on 443 HTTPS, and we're going to forward all of our traffic to our service A target group, which is our Lambda. Service B is going to go to service B, service C is going to go to service C, and so on. And that is pretty much it. That is the basic architecture of VPC Lattice in its simplest form. At this point, our clients can call our custom domain name. That will route onto our Lattice network, onto our service. If the access policy is passed, the listener and the forwarding rule will send it to its backend service. And that is without any routing between the VPC at all. Lattice takes care of all that for you. And then just to show traffic, service B going to service B, etc. We get all the observability that you'd expect from Lattice. So each service will generate its own metrics and its own logs, but also the service network itself will send metrics and logs to CloudWatch. So that's kind of the basics of Lattice. Let's look now at some of the flexibility that this decoupling gives us. So for example, say we want to migrate our service A from being a serverless, from being a Lambda function into our Kubernetes cluster. So our developers will repackage, redeploy service A into the Kubernetes cluster. We'll create an ingress path via the load balancer, and we'll define a Lattice target group that references that backend. And now to migrate our service, all we do is change our routing policy and forwarding policy. So now instead of forwarding traffic to service A's target group in Lambda, we're forwarding everything to the EKS ALB. And at that point, the client, without any change at all to the client, it's still the same authentication profile, still exactly the same from the client's perspective, that traffic will now route to the migrated service. And we'll have a look at that in the demo. If you want to do some canary testing, for example, if you want to proportionally send some traffic to your Lambda while sending some to your EKS deployment, you can do that as well, which is kind of shown on the screen at the moment, where you could have any proportion you want going to either. So that's the end of the slides. What I'll do now is just cut to a demo, which, as I say, was pre-recorded earlier. Okay, so here are the VPCs I've got set up for the demo. I've got a client VPC that's hosting an EC2 instance, just running a little Python script, which is going to call our services. We can have a look at that in a bit. We've got a VPC hosting an EKS cluster and a VPC hosting an EC2 node, just running a basic node hello world service. So you notice how they've all got the same side range, which is kind of horrible from a traditional networking perspective, but it does illustrate, as I say, that decoupling that Lattice gives you. So from a Lattice perspective, it really doesn't matter. So if we scroll down to the new Lattice section that we've now got and have a look, we've got a single service network defined here, my mock production service network. If we have a look in there, we have as we saw in the deck, a fairly broad access policy on this, which is allowing Lattice services to be invoked from a specific organization. The service network is associated at the moment with a single VPC, which is where my Python client is residing. And we've got a single service registered at the moment with this Lattice. So pretty simple stuff. So if we have a look at that service, you can see I've set it up with a custom domain name, which is using my own personal domain, but that allows us to do a CNAME and alias translation from my custom domain to the domain name that Lattice has generated for this particular service. So again, just to show a more granular access policy, this is allowing access to this service from a specific IAM role, which happens to be the IAM instance role of my client. And I've also got a condition there to stipulate which VPC is allowed access. And finally, to look at the routing, we've got a fairly simple listener forwarding setup. So it's listening on HTTPS 443, forwarding traffic to service A EC2 target group, which is the target group representing my EC2 Hello World service. But you can see I've also set up a couple of other target groups in here, which we can look at in a bit. So I've got a target group pointing to my Hello World Lambda function, and also a target group pointing to the application load balancer in front of my Kubernetes cluster, again, where there's a little Hello World function. So if we look at the client, like I say, it's a little Python client that's just doing a SIG-v4 authenticated call to whatever URL we pass in as an argument. So if we call this script and give it our custom domain name of our Lattice service, should be no surprises that this is going to go to our EC2 Lattice service, which is what the service is currently mapped to, the target group it's currently mapped to. So I'm just going to set this off in a loop. So we're going to call this every second, just leave this one running as we implement some changes to the actual Lattice service. So like a good cloud citizen, I've defined a lot of my Lattice artifacts in code. I happen to have used Terraform here. Don't worry, we're not going to go through this, but just to illustrate that I've got the listener here defined, and it's at the moment, it is forwarding everything to our EC2 target group. So let's change this to our Lambda target group. So quick change of code. We'll apply this Terraform. And we will have a look at our Lattice service and the routing of that. And yeah, if we just refresh, we can see it's now changed to the Lambda according to the code. And so if we go to the client, this is where I'm so glad I pre-recorded this demo, because I do know this is going to work. It now is going to forward all its traffic to the Lambda Lattice service. So let's look at that canary testing split. If we go back to my Terraform, I've got a little snippet here, which is going to do a weighted target group forwarding. So let's just paste that into my Terraform. And just to illustrate that this now is going to send, it's going to do it in a sort of 75-25 proportion split between my EKS target group, the one pointing at the application load balancer, and our Lambda. So let's apply that Terraform code. And go back and have a look at the service. And we can see it's applied this immediately. So now if we go to our client, and yeah, okay, so we can already see it's now starting to send some of its traffic to the Kubernetes backend, but also continuing to send to the Lambda according to that proportional split. So finally, just to illustrate the other kind of some of the more flexible rules and forwarding rules that you can implement, if we are just going to do this in the console, we're going to add another rule to this service. Let's call it version 2, and this time it's going to be based on a path, a URI path. So let's say everything that has a v2 path gets sent to our EC2 target group. We've saved that, and if we now go to our client and invoke the script with v2, we can see that that has now been sent to our EC2 Lattice service. And again, just to stress, there's been no changes on the client side. That has just been kept decoupled entirely from all those changes. It gives you an example of the flexibility that you can implement in the back end with Lattice. And that is it. So I don't know if I'm meant to be able to see any questions or comments.
No, I think I forgot to say at the beginning, in terms of people do have questions, drop them into the comments. Tash McCann has come in saying super cool. And like I said, it's kind of mind blowing in terms of, you can still keep on calling the same service name and it gets routed to, EC2 and EKS.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, anyone who's familiar with the service mesh, this won't be new, but I suppose, AWS have been quite a bit shy about calling this a service mesh, and I get their point. Normally with things like Istio or Linkerd or App Mesh, you have to deploy a fleet of proxies, sidecar proxies or something, and then manage those. Well, with Lattice, AWS is kind of taking care of that for you. So yeah.
Yeah, and I was kind of be interested to see where it goes with all these, where you typically, a lot of the setups going back a year or so, and you're looking at putting in transit gateway, handling routing that way. You got weighted policies and Route 53 in terms of how much is going to end up going to Lattice. I thought it was really cool when you're looking at you don't have that restrictions in terms of side ranges that are predefined for VPCs, and in terms of if you're sort of inheriting some of those. So there is a comment quoted up on screen from Tash. What awesome demo and presentation. What would you like to see next from Lattice?
So was that a question, Matt? Was that a question from you?
What would you like to see next from Lattice?
Okay, yeah, cool. So there's a few, it's early days for Lattice, but so there's a few things which I believe are in the pipeline. For example, at the moment there's no way of routing if you've got some on-prem clients, for example. If you've got that kind of hybrid setup, there's no way of routing access from on-prem unless you kind of manufacture some proxy deployment within the VPC and do it that way. I understand that there is going to be some kind of gateway construct that will come into Lattice, which will help with that.
Yeah, there's another. I was going to say there's one other question. I think people may have noticed that you went down the Terraform route.
Yeah.
So, are CloudFormation resources available for Lattice?
I'm sure there are. I don't want to get embroiled in the religious debate here. I just happen to be more comfortable with Terraform. I'm pretty sure that CloudFormation will be more than adequate to do the job.
Awesome. So thank you very much for that, Brice. I really appreciate that. If you have any questions, like I say, drop them in the chat or reach out to Brice or reach out in some way to us at the user group, and we'll try and get back to you. So one of the things that Brice mentioned there was that there may be some things that are upcoming in Lattice, and that's probably the same for most of the AWS services. People may be aware, coming up end of November, I think it's 27th November to 1st of December is a AWS ReInvent, and so timely sort of segue into this next section is one of the ways that you can get to reInvent if you reach the sort of criteria is through this thing, which is called the AWS All Builders Grant. I think my understanding is it's like it's only just recently opened and the submission closes something like the 1st of September. So for that reason, absolutely delighted to welcome Lisa and Gabby from IBM, who attended reInvent last year under this scheme, to tell us a lot more about it.
Fab. Thank you, Matt. Let me share my screen. There we go. So as Matt rightly said, I'm Gabby, and I'm currently a Scrum Master working within the public sector as part of IBM Consulting. And Lisa, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Gabby. So similar to Matt and Gabby, I work for IBM as well as a senior BA, typically in the automotive and retail industries.
Yep. And as Matt rightly said, we did attend AWS ReInvent last year as part of the All Builders Welcome Grant. It was a bit of a kind of random choice that we managed to hear about it. So I was scrolling through Twitter, as I do or X as it's called now, sorry, as I do much more than I probably should on a day-to-day basis. And saw one of their posts about this grant program that you could apply to and the chance to kind of go to this conference in Las Vegas. We work a lot with AWS products, which actually surprises a lot of people about IBM. But because we're a consulting company, we kind of choose whichever cloud provider is best for the projects we need to work on. And so, yeah, it seemed like it was a great opportunity. I already knew Lisa as part of our kind of employee network group within IBM. And so ran straight away to her and said, look at this incredible thing that we can apply for. And so us two and about 4 other IBMers managed to go last year with a cohort of about 300 others. But we wanted to make sure that as many people get to hear about it as possible this year, and that you don't just hear about it like I did off chance because you're scrolling through your timeline. So Lisa, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the grant and why it exists?
Thank you, Gabby. Yeah, so as Gabby said, we found out about this quite randomly. So we're both very passionate to try and share the message and explain what the program is and what it offers people. So essentially, the All Builders Welcome Grant program is a global program that focuses on building and empowering future technology leaders. So what they're trying to do, really, their main aim is to bridge some of the barriers that underrepresented groups face in technology. And so one of the ways they do that is by enabling successful applicants to go, as we said, to the ReInvent conference in Vegas. So as part of what the grant provides you, each successful applicant will then get their return airfare to Vegas and back costed for. So that will be free to them. Hotel accommodation throughout the conference will also be available, a full access pass to the conference, including a very useful fast track badge or little sticker, if you like, that gets you into the keynote speeches faster. So as we say, Gabby and I, successfully applied last year. So we joined about 300, a cohort of around 300 people. I think the year before was, maybe half that, around 150. So it's definitely been growing and growing over the past couple of years. And yeah, had a great experience attending that conference. So Gabby, let me hand back over to you if you want to talk a bit more about our experience.
I can indeed. So this is a little bit of an amalgamation of what happens at reInvent for anyone that hasn't been there previously and what specifically you get to enjoy as part of the grant program. Lisa rightly mentioned right at the start that there are keynote sessions, which is essentially where you get to hear on a huge big stage from some of the top leaders in AWS, including kind of the CEO, I think we had also the vice president for data and analytics was up there. The others I will have completely forgotten because it was an entire year ago. But essentially, you get to hear from leadership on the stage talking about the kind of topics in the technology industry, the new AWS products, most especially, that are kind of at the forefront of their mind. And so it's your first chance to hear about any new products that are coming out, how you can use them, client success stories, so that you can kind of understand for yourself what that means for you going forward. As Lisa said, we get, as part of the grant program, a fast track pass to all of these keynote events, which I will say in a conference of about 60,000 people is a huge thing because not many people actually get to be in the room. And also we get front row seats. So you get to be right at the front of all of the action, all of the music, and all of the fun that's going on there. You'll see if you just look to the right there, that we also got to be part of this global network. So we had people coming in from countries all around the world. Some of them had traveled like 24 hours plus to get there. But what this meant was that we not only had a program that was just for the week, but it's kind of expanded into a network of alumni that have gone on for the year afterwards. So we've managed to reconnect with those that are in London. We're having some people fly over from the US a little bit later to come and see us, just because they happen to be here and they want to hang out. But also we've had alumni kind of connect in different countries around the world, like Canada, Brazil, Colombia, and different parts of the USA. And I think the most important part of this for our progress and for kind of us extending as tech leaders is that the network then forms almost a support system. So if someone's written a blog about a new technology or a new product that they've created or whatever it might be, these are always the first people to go on LinkedIn and share it with them and give them feedback and that kind of thing. And so it just gives you this huge group of friends, I'll say, but also colleagues that are just as interested in AWS all across the world. Just at the bottom there, you'll see the certification lounge, which is a specific kind of area that's set up in Las Vegas for those who are already AWS certified once they get there. It's to make you feel a little bit special that you've gone the extra mile to learn more and become kind of a certified cloud practitioner or a solutions architect or whatever else it is that you plan to do. Last year, and I can't promise it will be this year as well, but we did also have included in the grant program an exam voucher, which meant that if you wanted to go and do further AWS certs, it was paid for by the program. Again, just a real testament to their, I guess, desire to have us become better and learn more and become those kind of future technology leaders that Lisa was talking about before. And then finally, another part that happens within the actual reInvent itself is you'll have a huge hall that they call the Expo Hall. And that's a chance for, I'm going to say hundreds of companies, or at least it felt like it, just to show off their wares, to tell you about the different technologies that they have. IBM actually had a stand there, which was quite cool because we got to hear about it from a little bit of an outsider's perspective. But specifically within that expo hall is what they call the All Builders Welcome Lounge. And that is a place that we kind of treat as home while we're in Vegas, dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it just really sits at the core to kind of show how important that is as a topic to AWS and how driven they are in making sure that we have a technology industry that includes lots and lots of different groups, and that we don't all look the same. Just on the bottom right there, you'll see some things that are kind of unique to the grant as well, which we had lots and lots of networking events, again, which just adds to that global network, but not just with our peers in this sense. We also got the chance to speak to AWS leaders and experts, again, to kind of help further our career and our skills. But also to give back a mentoring lunch. So we were able to kind of be the leaders ourselves in that sense and speak to students who were interested in technology and kind of following in our footsteps. And then further on again with the wider AWS community that kind of sit around ED&I and to make sure that you see people that look like you in the room. I'll hand over to Lisa then, again, to talk a little bit about what we specifically took away from the conference. And I believe there might be a very embarrassing TikTok that this slide starts off with.
Day 2 at ReInvent started off with an 8:30 keynote, and as we got in, we found a live band playing Mr. Brightside. As part of the grant, we got front row seats, which is amazing because it was packed. And then out came the keynote speaker, the CEO of AWS, and the crowd went wild. He spoke about customer success stories, their commitment to be water positive by 2030, and some of the new offerings. I noticed there was a really big focus on data this year. And Lisa and I went to a session about how nonprofits use AWS to build tech for humanity. You can see there's a common theme here. One of my favorites was Flickshop, which uses tech to connect incarcerated individuals to their families and communities. And then rushed back to the expo center because I realized I was late for the football. This was a networking event to watch the US and England group qualifiers. I then watched a talk at the IBM booth, and because it was Giving Tuesday, I got involved in an activity to pack school lunches for underprivileged students in the area, and hopped on a coach to Mandalay Bay for my next session, which is about emotional intelligence and how it drives innovation. This was so interesting, I could talk about it forever. And then I went to the content lounge to learn some more about Slack and Salesforce and some of their new offerings. And then in the evening, I met up with the others for a reception at Chateau Rooftop, which is the one with the Eiffel Tower restaurant. We had this incredible view of the Bellagio fountains, so we watched those and see them just there. And James had a dance off. I wish I'd have caught the video of him doing the backflip, but unfortunately I did not. By that point, we were super exhausted, so we headed back through the wind, which is gorgeous, and got pizza before we went to bed.
Cool. So Lisa, being that you are kind of working in the automotive industry and you're very focused on kind of requirements and client engagement, what did you take away from reInvent?
Thanks, Gabby, but I don't think we could intro this slide without talking about that TikTok first of all. What I would say, and props to you, I think you did an amazing job there in capturing just the sort of array of things that happen in a single day at reInvent. So when we were looking at this and thinking of our key takeaways, I think even looking at your video there are so many things in that I completely forgot about, and there's so many things that you take away. So it is quite hard to distill that down into a nice sort of bite-sized chunk. But as you quite rightly said, Gabby, a couple of the things that I really wanted to quickly talk about centers a lot around my day job. So I sit within IBM iX, which is our digital agency or interactive experience agency. And so a lot of my work focuses on customer experience. So one of my key takeaways around this was how we can look at using data-driven insights and really making sure that at every point in the customer journey, we're able to kind of how we can build an analytics system that essentially gives us like a feedback loop so that we can derive insights at each point in the journey and build our maturity in terms of our analytics. So really a lot of great sessions on that, and a lot of good case studies and practical applications that I was able to discuss with my teams and thinking about how we may be able to look at that. As I said, I also work primarily with automotive and retail clients. So I had an absolute field day going to the industry showcases at the Industry Lounge and getting to chat to experts about some of the new ideas and use cases they have for different AWS tech around manufacturing, vehicle development, supply chain. There was also, so a lot of the focus in reInvent last year was around sustainability too. So got to hop over to the sustainability showcase too. And they had a great display on the Amazon electric delivery vehicles that they're partnering with Rivian, and getting some information on that. And actually a live delivery vehicle there, which is surprisingly larger than they look, I have to say. So again, a lot focused on digital reinvention. There's a lot of change happening in the industry at the moment, as any of you working in that will be very much aware. And so there was so much interesting insights around different workloads that may be able to support organizations in building and making sure the customer experiences are meeting the changes and the demands of the industry. So super interesting. And that's just, a couple of snippets but from all the stuff that we took away. So there are some of my thoughts, but Gabby, do you want to share a bit about what you took away from your reInvent experience?
Absolutely. So Lisa and I kind of sit different sides of the industry, I think, in that she's in very retail and private. I have always been, and probably will always be at this point, in the public sector, because I think one of the really important things for me is building technology that kind of works for society, and is that almost naive view of making the world a better place for everyone, which I apparently have not lost since university. So reInvent for me was really about finding out how AWS and also other kind of companies and organizations and even individuals are using tech for good, and creating kind of partnerships with nonprofits and also doing much more in the public sector realm. And so I spent a lot of my week just running around different talks and sessions and speaking to people and networking, to understand more just about what was being done. You can see in the video that I had there that one of the sessions actually Lisa and I went to together was around some of the non-profit partnerships that AWS is currently working with. So Flickshop was one that really stood out to us in the US specifically. And I think it was just a really good example for me of not only, I guess, what AWS are doing in the public sector realm and in the kind of non-profit realm, but also the opportunity that you have to very much tailor your AWS and your reInvent experience to what is most interesting to you and what you want to get out of your career or your hobby or whatever it might be that you're using the technology for. So that was a really good takeaway for me. The second thing was that I really wanted to focus in that week on my personal skills and training and development. And so before we went to the conference, I'd just done my certified cloud practitioner certificate, which now feels much less impressive now that I've met someone that's done a solutions architect. It's so much more difficult. But hopefully that'll be my next one. But I spent a lot of my time in the certifications lounge, again, speaking to other people about different kind of certs or credentials that I could do. And I know that a lot of people as well went to reInvent to go and sit and do actual hands-on labs. So we had friends in the grant who were kind of DevOps engineers or developers, and where we were sat in talks and listening to people and chatting, they spent their days really getting to grips with the new technologies that have been mentioned in the keynotes especially, and they just took their laptops with them everywhere and tried out everything that they possibly could. So yeah, that's another really good part of the week that you can get involved in. On to then what I think most people actually want to hear about when we talk about reInvent, which is how do I get there myself? So as Matt mentioned earlier, applications have now opened. It's essentially an application form. And as far as we're aware, this year will be the same as last year in that that's the only real stage that there is. There's no interviews or like screening process or anything. It's an application form that you fill out with your personal information and then a few questions around your experience with technology, what you'll get out of the conference itself, and some kind of personal or professional achievements that you're quite proud of. There are requirements to apply. So as Lisa mentioned at the beginning, the purpose of this program is very much to build a diverse future of technical leaders. And so it's very much dedicated to people who have either a proven interest in AWS or cloud or kind of technology in general. And that can be personal or professional. As you'll have heard from our stories, neither of us are kind of hands-on techies, but we are very much involved in the technology and especially explaining the technology to our clients. So that's kind of the way that we fit into the picture. You do have to be in your first 5 years of a technology-related career. Now, that can also include people that have transitioned over from different careers. So, for example, one of the groups that we had were veterans who had kind of gone from their time in the army and started into a tech career. And so we're still in their first 5 years, even though they were maybe a couple of decades older than me and Lisa and much more experienced. The third requirement is that you do have to be part of an underrepresented group in technology. So there's a list of kind of identities or groups in the application form, and they ask you which one you identify with. And we've just got some examples on the screen here, but this is by no means exhaustive. So if you do want to find out more, there is a link that we will put on the pack, and we'll also pop it in the kind of chat that shows you how to get to the All Builders Welcome site so that you can read a little bit more about it. You essentially click on the grant screen and then it's got an apply now button. The deadline for applications, as Matt said, is the 1st of September. I think that is US time, so it kind of translates over to a Saturday for us, but just, don't go late just because of that. If you do have any questions or want to hear more about our experience or even ask about any advice that we might have, Lisa and I's LinkedIns were on the first page, but again, we can pop those in the chat for everyone. Thank you for listening, and that is us.
So that's fantastic. Thank you very much for that. It's a I mean, I know last year was I did a little bit of reInvent on a roving data reporter for AWS, and it's I don't think I'd be brave enough to do the full TikToks yet. It was something to aspire to. There were definitely a few comments coming in from people who were impressed by that. So
and now I don't like watching it back. I'm just like, oh, get rid of it.
Yeah, we got like 2 small kids, and they're like mad into like they want to make their own TikToks and stuff. So it's I need to try and get cooler.
There's always 2023, Matt. You never know.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. So now it's one of the the thing with the grant, as well as the fact that it's fantastic to actually hear from people who applied and actually got the opportunity to go and attend. The grant is aimed, like I say, I think it's people sort of 21 and over in the first 5 years, and it's brilliant that AWS are investing in that and flying people over to Vegas. So one of the let me try and sort out the screen. Yes, one of the areas that they're also looking to invest in is around the engagement with universities. And I know that as a user group based in South Wales, we actually have a number of very large universities and a number that sort of specialize in cloud engineering, software engineering. I've had been fortunate to have the chance over the last few years being engaged with some of the universities where we've had year in industry apprenticeships. We've sort of gone in and helped judge some of the sort of dissertations and the projects. We've really struggled to get people along to the user groups. And I think from chatting to Stephen previously, finding out where there are options like cloud captains and I don't believe there was sort of any applications from Wales. So I think part of this is a call to action and a drive to try and how can we engage with all these fantastic universities that are on our doorstep. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Stephen.
Hello, folks, and I'm not going to have fancy slides and definitely no TikToks tonight. I am, however, going to show you, I'm very proud of the sticker I got, which is awesome, but it's also so large I can't actually fit it on any laptop I have. So I'm waiting to find the perfect place to put my Team Wales AWS sticker. But folks, I'm really delighted to speak to you tonight. This is my first time speaking to a user group of AWS. And I'm fairly new to Amazon. I joined in January, and I've been doing DevRel to students, developer relations and academic advocacy for about 10 years. But the thing I'm talking about tonight is really exciting, and it's one of the sort of, to me, a evolution of user groups aimed at a particular audience, which is really interesting. It's really exciting, and for the student who might be intimidated to join a user group because all of you know so much and they're still learning, and I know that you all know that everyone's on a learning journey, but when you're a student, especially in further or higher education, it might be a little bit challenging to go to that user group and try to fit in. You might feel an imposter. Now, I'm in AWS, just about half a year, and I still feel like an imposter because there's always so much to learn. And it's a really good thing to bring that to students and help them on that learning journey. I know Matt has mentioned he's engaged with the universities, and every user group lead I speak to, every hero I meet, every community builder is really excited about working with students. So tonight, I hope I'll give you a framework and a way to engage through the user group with me and the academic advocacy team. So very quickly, we're a new team. We're only been in AWS we're just a year now, and we are a team of 5 people spread all over the world. And our goal is to create and grow cloud clubs, which are user groups for students on campus run by students all over the world. We have a target of 80 cloud clubs to launch this year. We're very close to that target. And each club has a student captain associated with it, who is the instigator, who applies to become a captain. It's a rigorous application process. They have to demonstrate their ability to form and run a club. They also have to demonstrate their AWS ability. I mean, you have to write and create a video. It's a tough process, and only about 3% of applicants make the grade. So it is a challenge. But we don't do it because we like examining students and we think it's fun to torture them. No, we do it because it's a big commitment to start a club. A lot of students find it tricky to get people to turn up. Those of you who've been involved in a user group know that it doesn't happen without a lot of work. So the students need support. And we're there to support them. We support in a number of ways. The way I support, I'm a developer advocate, so I support by giving talks, helping them with their learning journey, creating content like workshops and blogs and code demos, and delivering those to the students directly. So sometimes I'll be in person, sometimes I'll be virtual like I am now. You can see I've even gotten some extra clouds to help me. They just arrived this week, so I still haven't figured out where to put them, but you can see them lit up behind me. And everything we do is student-focused, learner-focused. You don't have to be a registered student in a university to attend or join a user group or a cloud club, but you do have to be a registered student to be a captain. Now, the next challenge is some students are able to set up the club, get it running completely independent of faculty and independent of us nearly. And we support those students. They're amazing. But some students need a little more support. And it's important for us to be able to engage and support faculty. Now, AWS does already engage faculty. They have this amazing AWS Academy program where lecturers and professors can become an official AWS Academy instructor, which is really cool. It's a different program to ours, which is student focused. But we want to engage those academics. We want to support them too. Today I flew to London and gave a talk to the Queen Mary University AWS Summer School, where 2 academics were teaching incredible content to students in the summer school, university students in the summer school, who were learning all sorts of advanced topics that I'm still learning myself. And getting to meet and support those academics will help us spread Cloud Clubs to other universities all over the world. And this is where you come in, because you may have engaged with a university. You may know a lecturer who says, I would teach AWS, but who in AWS is going to help me? And it can't just be on the shoulders of the user group in the area to support everything. That's not fair. So I want to work with you. I want to support you if you want to work with universities in identifying the right academics to work with and finding the right student to encourage to apply. Now, I want to be very clear. We do not want to make any student apply to be a cloud captain. This should definitely not be a stick that we beat them. If you don't apply, you're not going to do well. This is a networking opportunity or anything like that. It is a networking opportunity, but more importantly, the student has to be interested in increasing their own skills and helping their classmates and their university mates increase their skills too. Now, unfortunately, we had no applicants in our last 2 cohorts for Cloud Captains, which were just this month gone, and in February and March. And some of that is down to it's very hard on social media, especially when you're an old, not very cool social media person like me. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter, and I've just gotten an Instagram account recently, and TikTok is too much for me. So trying to identify and find the right students, make sure that they see our social media posts, that's tricky. So I need your help there. What universities are currently engaged with the user group? What faculty do you know? I don't mind if the university is small or it's a I know you have different names for different colleges, but in Ireland we have technical universities, we have a few institutes of technology. I used to lecture in one myself. So whatever the 3rd level college is, further education, higher education, if the students are interested in learning about cloud and you know some faculty, or even if you know a likely candidate student, I want you to send them our way. Now, I've put a link. It's s12d.com/students, where you can see all the current cloud captains. I want to say a little bit about the UK captains. We have a pretty impressive group already. We have 2 in Northern Ireland. We have 1 in Scotland. We have 1 in Stoke-on-Trent, and we have 6 in London. I would love, Wales is the only part of the UK where we have no captain at all. I would love to have 1 captain in Wales, if I could find 1. I'd love more, but I'd be very happy with 1. So that's my spiel. I'm going to stop now and answer any questions and say, think about, would you as a user group member, maybe as the user group lead, a community builder, maybe you've been to ReInvent. My team were at ReInvent last year promoting Cloud Clubs. I'm going to be promoting Cloud Clubs at ReInvent this year on my own. So if you get to ReInvent, definitely come and talk to me about Cloud Clubs. Think about, is there a student or faculty in your life that you could put in contact with me and we could work together to support them? And finally, you can check out some of the cool things we make available to students. We have a GitHub Learner Library. We have workshops available which are free for students to practice. I'm going to put the links in for you to check those out. you can do them yourself, but they'll probably be too easy for you. They're aimed at students. And thank you very much for listening. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Stephen. And it's like, hoping after, what to me felt like an inspirational speech. I think there's a huge amount of untapped potential here in South Wales. And I think even, it's, lots of stuff in technology. So Swansea and Cardiff as a region, as part of the Tech City regions, is quite vibrant, especially now in the area of things like AI. Lots of large banks. That the makers of Fortnite games have now just opened a European office in Cardiff in the last week or so. So there's lots of investment in the IT and technology business. So it's a fantastic place for people who are interested. If they're down here, they enjoy the lifestyle, the work-life balance, the opportunities, and here's an opportunity to sort of network and reach out and be part of a community. So
absolutely. And you may have gathered from my accent, I'm not actually from Wales. I have visited Wales, and I have a Welsh surname, but I'm not actually of Welsh descent. It's a long story, but what's really cool for me is that you're very short distance away from me. I'm right across the Irish Sea. I probably wouldn't sail to you. My brother has a boat. I'll probably get an airplane, but I'm very close, and it's definitely an opportunity for us to work together if we can find the right students and the right universities.
Fantastic. So let's hope that next time we talk, or how frequent are the cohorts, or do people apply?
We're stunned by the demand. I mean, we were hoping there would be demand, but we had thousands of applicants. So we may open another cohort this year, but we actually have so many applicants, it's possible there won't be another cohort till early next year. So I'm not sure exactly. It's just we have a target of 80 clubs. We're very close to that. So we may not actually be able to open up another cohort this year. However, we will make exception for a referral from an AWS hero, a user group lead, a community builder, or an AWS employee. So you all would definitely count if you find the right candidate. We will make an exception. I will definitely talk to any candidate, or even if faculty say, we're interested, but we need to talk to you about the right type of candidate first. They can absolutely talk to me, and we can discuss what makes the ideal captain in this situation.
Fantastic. So hopefully if people aren't watching this live, they'll see the recording, they'll see the links, they can check them out, they can get in contact with you. Obviously get in contact with the user group for referrals or something like that. And
any way you can get in contact. I'm not using Twitter much these days because various reasons, but I am on LinkedIn, and we have every week we're meeting different heroes from different countries who are trying to identify the right students. So don't be a stranger, get in touch, and we'll definitely love to have that conversation with you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that brings us to the end of our first virtual online meetup for some time. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You've taken something from it. It's been quite a whistle-stop tour. Everything from quite a deep technical dive into VPC Lattice, which is one of those. It's kind of like a networking service. It's probably going to fundamentally change the way that a lot of people do networking within AWS. So I definitely recommend watching that back again. Obviously, the All Builders Grant is brilliant to hear from people that have applied. And the academic, the universities. So for that, I'd like to, a huge thank you to Priest, to Gabby, to Lisa, to Stephen. Thank you very much to anyone who's listened in. If you get a chance, hopefully we'll see some people next month at Serverless Days Cardiff. With that, wish everyone well, and we'll catch up soon. Take care.